I have a windmill. There's an actual well there. So you want to buy land, or you're looking for land. I kind of have experience with this because 2013, 2014, we bought 5 acres. And in my opinion, back then, land was overpriced. I laugh because the prices now are just insane. But I ended up buying 2 pieces of property. One I sold, it just wasn't a good fit, and I'll get into that later. But this one we're on now, I bought, and it's 5 acres. I bought it at $15,000 an acre, and it didn't have septic or well, and there's no public sewer or water to this property. Well, there is electric ran down the road. We're down the main road about a half a mile, and so there's electrical transformers. I was able to have electric ran when I needed it, and that didn't cost me anything. So the plan when we bought this land was to build, and we did. And but during that process, like I said, we had a well dug and we had a septic. So I don't know what things cost nowadays. Everyone says it costs 10 to 20 grand to get everything, but I think we dug either it was 120 feet or it was 160 feet. And I don't think I paid more than $2,000 for my well, but it was, I paid a well service and they came out and dug it, and we hit water. And I was pretty naive at the point. I didn't know that sometimes you don't hit water. And my neighbors learned the lesson on that. But in this video, I'll get to that story. So that was the first thing we did, was we dug a well. And like I said, I was very naive. I should have had it contingent in the contract, is if we didn't hit water, there's no point of building on the property. But we already bought the property at this point. But we have water out here. Septic was easy. I hired a company. They had it done in one day. But I'm gonna guess that cost $3,500. And I don't have my records to look at because they all burned up in the fire. But I have emails. So that is my story. We got the land, we got the well dug, we got the septic, and we didn't have electric ran out to the house until it was almost done framed. I did have a temp pole put up so the contractors could use their power tools and stuff. So when the electric company came out here to run it to the house, they dug the trench, they did everything. It didn't cost me anything. Now, if it was past a certain feet, they were going to have to charge. But I think it's probably 300 feet maybe 300 feet to the main road, where the transformer is, where they had to dig the trench. So that wasn't going to cost me anything. So that kind of encases all of our utility concern, or your utility concerns on a property. We have a gravel road that comes from the main road, and that's something, as neighbors, there's 4 houses out here. When I moved out here, there was 2 other houses, but we have to maintain ourselves. Luckily, I have a very gracious neighbor, and he has a tractor, and we all pitch in for gravel, and they dump the gravel and he spreads it. He's probably overworked a little bit, but we appreciate Chuck nonetheless. So that is something you need to think of, how you're going to get to your property. Easements. We don't have an HOA out here, thank gosh. Like, I live in an HOA currently, and it's not bad. Like the HOA I live in right now, they're not that strict. They're strict, but it's not that bad. Like you can't park an RV in your yard, which I don't know. I tend to disagree with, because there's a very affluent neighborhood across from where I have land right now, and they let RVs, and like it doesn't decrease the value. I understand it can, like, if you let it get to that point, but like I said, that's a whole nother topic. I don't know if you can see that. I can't really see my screen, but I have a windmill. There's an actual well there. It was a hand dug well, and it's brick lined. It's really cool, but they filled it in. It only drops down like 3 feet. So I don't have, the only fence that's on this property is on the back, and that's because my neighbors to the east have horses. They own like, let's see if I can, they own all that, and they just keep buying land. Good for them. They have a horse company, and they sell horses. I don't know what you do with horses, okay? Either way. But so that's my story on this land. And how I found this land is we were looking for land, and at the time all the land that I wanted that looked good was way out of our budget. And this honestly was this cost too much in my opinion. I said that before, but it was about what I made in a year. So I could justify it in my head that way. And we were just driving. I bought a new older Camaro, and we were just driving around cruising. I think I had one kid at the time. I have 4 now. We were just cruising around, testing the Camaro out, and we saw a for sale sign. So we came down this road. I think it had been on the market one day, or it went on the market that day. And it's not like now where a piece of property goes up and it's immediately under contract. Things did go under contract fairly quick back then, but the next day we called our realtor and we put an offer in, and I lowballed him like an idiot. I think I lowballed him like $15,000 under asking. And they're like, no, like, we know we can sell this for what it's worth. And but I was like, you know what? You got a good point. So I think it was a full price offer. And I'm glad we did that, because we built a house out here. We lived out here for 12 years. I had a house fire, but we plan to build another house. But before that, I'm going to build a shop. So the shop's going to go right there, kind of next to my neighbors. So that is our story on land. But there's so many things you need to think of when you're buying land. Now, I don't have a comparable land to this anywhere. There is 5 acres, and it's just rough farmland. Like, it's farmland. They're growing crops on it. So there's still terraces and stuff. That is going for $60,000 an acre. 5 acres. So that's $300,000. This, if I were to sell it, it has electric, it has septic, and it has a water well. I could probably sell it for, I don't know how much more. We don't plan to sell, so I'm not even thinking about that. But you guys thinking to buy like a 5 acre tract of land, and this is close enough to the city, but it's far enough. So we are in city limits. So I have to abide by all the building codes, which kind of sucks, but you know, it is what it is. Also, but we are close enough to the city where I'm not 30 miles away. At the time I had a job, I didn't want to drive that far. I didn't want to drive an hour to work. I did that when I first moved to the city, and it was miserable driving in traffic every day. Like, it just wasn't worth it. So that leads me on to my next story. Before we bought this land, we were looking for land, and a friend at work, it was 7 acres. And I'm like, how much are you going to sell it for? And he said $25,000. And it was south of this property. It was 30-ish miles, but it was like a 45-minute drive to work, even farther to this property. But I didn't have this property at the time. And it was surrounded by trailer homes. There's nothing wrong with trailer homes. There's trailer homes that you don't want to be around. Those were the kind that were around this property. And then we were going to build a 3,400 square foot house. So I wanted to retain my property values. And one morning I just woke up. We were about to break ground. I'm like, we can't do this. Like this is a mistake. I bought this land. I could probably sell it for what I got into it, but let's start looking for land. And that's how we ended up with this property. But it did delay our process, our building process, but it was worth it. But I was able to unload that property to I sold it on Craigslist. I think they used it for horses or something. It was totally fenced off, 7 acres, and there's no building restrictions. But I got out what I bought it for, so nothing lost there other than time. Time's important. But onto this property, like I love it. Like if I could just show you around. So the property directly north of us is just land. It will eventually be sold, but yeah, so it will eventually be sold, but the guy that owns it, he's an old farmer, and it probably won't be sold till he dies. It's just the reality. So, I mean, and he is getting older. He will not take any calls about buying another 5-acre tract, because I talked to him about buying the 5 acres next to me, and he shut all communication down after that. So it is what it is. Right now, at this point, if he wanted to sell for land values, now I couldn't afford it. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to spend $300,000 on 5 acres next to me that I couldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't do it at this time. I would have 10 years ago, but right now, where you're currently using this property as storage, I got 2 RVs. I got a Connex with whatever left I have from the fire, which isn't much. So this video, I'm trying to make it about buying land and what you should consider. You want it to be close enough to where you work or the area you're used to, but sometimes you can't afford that. So think about that. I don't know who's buying land anymore. Like, there's hardly any for sale, and as soon as it gets sold up. Investors, companies, I don't know, but it's way too expensive these days. So I kind of do want to show you guys a view without me in the picture of our land. So I own to the road right there. That's one of my neighbor's property. There's the neighbors that had issues drilling wells. That is another property, and these are all 5-acre tracts. Like I said, these guys own all that land. I hope they buy this land north of us. But we got all that one. So these guys right there, they started building while we were building. So I didn't really get to know them, but I met them and got to talking to them. But they were I think they drilled a well. They didn't hit water. I think they drilled like in excess of 5 wells. I don't know how many wells they dug, but they finally did hit water. And when you drill a well, you pay per foot. Whether you hit water or not, you still have to pay. So imagine, and they were drilling deep wells, like 300 feet. Imagine drilling 5 wells and not hitting water. Like, that just had to, that's where they say, you know, sometimes it costs $10,000, $20,000 to find water on your land, and they probably spent that. So, yeah, that's one thing you really need to think of is water. Because you can always truck water out, and I think they even considered that option. They also we had a community meeting and we talked about bringing water down from the road, but that was going to be like a $500,000 project. Like, split between 4 people, it just wasn't feasible, or 4 households. Like we had water. It sucks you don't have water, so I couldn't justify the $125,000 it would cost to bring water down here. And then then I still have to pipe it from my house to the road, so it wasn't gonna happen. So I wanted to come back to where I live now. After our house fire, I moved into my aunt's house. It was just a temporary thing. And then after that, I have a big 5th wheel RV, and we set that up. I still had power on the property. We kind of rigged up the house to work for power. And I also bought a second RV, and I have a big family. I have 4 kids, so we had 2 RVs set up. We were living there. We were living there until we bought a house. So we were looking for we were always looking for a house after that. Okay, so we end up finding a house really close to where our land was, or where we used to live. It's 2 miles down the road. It was an amazing price. It was around the lake. It was across from the pool. The community has a pool, so we end up buying that house. And that's where we currently live. Now we live in a community, and it's nice to be in a community, but I still rather live on the land, because although I have people living closer to me in this addition, the neighbors I was around on our land, it's a much better, closer knit community. Like, we all trust each other. We all rely on each other, but it's just a better feeling. I have 3 other houses, so 3 other families that are to get to know, other than, I think there's 750 houses in the addition I live in. And I know a lot of people in that, but I don't really know them. And I try to help out as much as I can in the community, but I still rather have a small knit community than the community I live in now. Our plan is once we build a house, I don't think we're gonna sell the house that we have in. I don't think we're gonna sell the house that we have in the addition. 1, we'll either turn it into a rental, or 2, I can give it to one of my kids when they're older. Just because the economy sucks so bad, I don't see how young people are affording starter houses. When I first got a job, when I moved to the city and I bought a house, starter houses were $80,000 to $120,000. I bought a brand new house for $130,000. It was 1,500 square feet. That's bigger. It's not bigger than the house I have now, but that's a starter house. It was perfect. I mean, I could have got a cheaper house, but it was a perfect starter house for I was married at the time. I'm still married, but it was a perfect house to start a family in, and we did. Right after we bought the house, we found out we were pregnant, and we started a family in that house, and it was perfect. I don't see how people are affording houses, or in this day and age, like a starter house is $300,000+, it seems like. And I was making an okay amount of money when we bought that house, but I don't think I couldn't afford a starter house now. So and just in case housing is not something people can afford in the future, I'm going to keep it so my kids have at least a house they can have, or something. They can use it as long as they want. So that's our plans as far as our current living situation. But Yeah, I feel like I'm rambling a lot, and this video is just a lot of rambling, but I don't know. I want to get my thoughts out. So I want to show you the current neighborhood I live in. A lot smaller house. There's my house. You can see how close my neighbors are, which they're both nice. All the neighbors around here are nice, but still way too close. But I got the pool house, and the pool that we use in the summer, we can just walk over there, and there's a park for the kids. So that aspect of living in this neighborhood is good. All my kids, their friends, they all live here, most of them anyway, and they can just go play on the pool or the park together, and that does make it nice. But that has its drawbacks. I don't know really what to say, but I'm sure there are.